Good evening. Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for people to tune in before I get started. And I want to apologize for the technical difficulties I had a couple of minutes ago. Hopefully, I won't have any more problems tonight. Hopefully, we'll be able to get through this without any more difficulties. I was having internet issues before, but let's power through this. While we wait, I want to encourage people to follow me on Twitter at NewPosBlog. Also, I want to encourage you to like my Facebook page, New Possibilities, and to follow our book club, Reading as Activism, on Facebook. Like that page, follow that page. Each month, we read a different book written by a Black author about Black people. Most of the books are nonfiction, novels. Not nonfiction. They're actually fiction. They're novels. And we do some nonfiction as well. So we're open to ideas. So I encourage you to like that page on Facebook, Reading as Activism. On the last Saturday of each month, we read a different book. And I hope that you all can join us. Our meetings are via Zoom. So you can join our meetings regardless of where you are in the world. So again, I want you to encourage you to like Reading as Activism on Facebook, to like my New Possibilities page on Facebook, and to follow me on Twitter at NewPosBlog. So I want to know, first of all, before I even get into this, can you all hear me fine? Is the video coming through clearly and loudly and all that kind of stuff? If everything is fine, you can throw a 7 in the chat. I would appreciate it. I want to make sure that everything is fine before we get started. So if you can throw a 7 in the chat, I see that we have a few people watching right now. If you can throw a 7 in the chat to let me know that everything is fine, I would appreciate it. I know there's a delay between when I say something and when you all actually hear it. So I just need someone to indicate that everything is fine. Okay, I see that everything is fine. Shout out to everyone in the chat room. Thanks for tuning in. What did you all think about the debate? Please let me know in the chat. I want to know, what did you think about the debate? Who did you think won the debate? So I'm really interested in hearing what y'all have to say. So I'm going to provide my about this debate. First of all, Mike Pence did a better job than I thought that he would do, especially after Donald Trump's disastrous performance during the first debate. So I think that Pence did a good job. I think that overall he did a good job. He made good points, even though I didn't agree with hardly anything that came out of his mouth. I thought that the way he handled himself, the way he explained his positions, I think that he came across very concise, for the most part. Well, he did talk over the time limits and stuff, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I think that he did a good job of articulating the position of conservatives and also of the Trump administration. He did it in a way, as somebody was saying before on CNN, they were talking about how he made the Trump administration's views appear to be normal and rational and all that kind of stuff. He did a great job of explaining his positions. One of the biggest problems I had with the way he presented himself is that he kept talking over the time limit repeatedly. Also, he interrupted Kamala Harris when she was talking. So while she was talking, he would make some points in the middle of her presentation, cutting into her time. So I thought that was, I didn't like that. I thought that was, it was disrespectful, but it was nowhere near as disrespectful as Donald Trump was. And I think that in light of Donald Trump's horrific performance, this guy looked like a saint, basically, compared to that. So I think that he did a good job for the Trump administration. And I'm trying to look at this objective. You all know where I stand on the issues. You know my points and my positions and stuff like that. I don't have any love or any respect for Donald Trump or his administration. So I thought that was, I thought that he did a fairly good job. And a lot of my people on Facebook weren't feeling that at all. On my personal Facebook page, they were like, nah, he didn't do a good job and and blah, blah, blah. And I feel him on that because they don't like him. They don't like what he represents or what he stands for. But I think that he did a good job presenting his arguments and stuff. One thing that I found interesting about this particular debate is that on several occasions, both of the candidates completely just ignored the actual question that was being asked. And instead, they just talked about what they felt like talking about. And, I just found that it's disrespectful to the forum and it's disrespectful to the moderator. But I understand what it's about. Like when you go into a debate, like I'm sure that they have practiced their debates. And, I heard that Kamala Harris practiced with this somebody else that was running against her before. And it's like, I'm sure that they had like these canned points that they wanted to make, like these prepackaged points that they wanted to make. And what they did is they put them in wherever they saw fit. You know what I'm saying? So they made sure that, hey, I'm going to talk about A, B, and C, regardless of what this moderator is talking about. That's what I'm going to raise. These are the points I want to highlight. And in some ways I respect that, but in other ways I don't. I think it's disrespectful to the moderator and to the program. And also it doesn't answer the questions that a lot of the American people want to hear. It was interesting how, they asked Kamala Harris about, about transparency with respect to health. Like they asked both of the candidates, like, do you think the president should be really transparent about the state of his health? And I think that was a great question. And I don't think either one of the candidates answered that really in a satisfactory kind of way. So that's one thing. But when they asked that question, instead of just focusing on transparency with respect to health, Kamala Harris went into the issue of transparency in terms of the amount of taxes paid and all that kind of stuff. And I think that was a smart move on her part, because that whole tax issue may not have even been discussed at all if it wasn't for her raising it in that kind of way. Because if I recall correctly, I don't think that moderator even asked anything about Donald Trump's taxes and all that kind of stuff. And I think that her focusing on that point was a great thing to do, to highlight the fact that here you have this man, this a millionaire, somebody that's making tens of millions of dollars. He may even be a billionaire. I'm not quite sure on that, but he may be a billionaire. And this man only paid $750, not $100,000, but dollars in taxes. And, that is just absolutely outrageous. That's less money in taxes than the average hardworking American citizen pays in taxes. So it was very important for her to raise that point so that the working class man could understand just how privileged, somebody like Donald Trump is. They're able to avoid paying federal income taxes. And then not only did he just pay $750 in income tax, and I think it was for 2016 and 2017, for a 10-year period, this man didn't pay anything in income taxes. And I think that it was great that she raised that whole point. But for a lot of these people, it's not even going to be an issue for them. Like a lot of these Trump supporters, they will support him regardless of anything that he says or does just about. I mean, these people view the fact that this man got away with paying zero taxes for 10 years and then only $750 for a couple of years. They view that as being smart. They view that as being clever and being wise and having skills and stuff like that, to actually get out of paying taxes. And they talk about how everybody is not trying to pay taxes and stuff like that. So they view that as a great thing. So I thought that that was really, so it's like, regardless of what you say, like regardless of how many times people say it's unfair that this man didn't pay any taxes, he only pays $750 in taxes, regardless of all those arguments that you make to these Trump supporters, they see that as if he is smart, like he's some kind of genius. And in response to that, Mike Pence basically said, well, hey, he basically said, well, he denies those reports about the taxes and all that kind of stuff. And he referred to those as rumors. But I know more likely than not, those are actual facts. Like, from what I understand, the New York Times obtained his tax records. So, yeah, that's one of the points that I wanted to raise. Another thing is this, like, they talked about the whole issue of the economy. And Kamala Harris was emphasizing the fact that the Biden administration would be about investing into people and not just investing into into businesses and stuff like that, like investing into workers and stuff like that, focusing on helping our workers instead of focusing on all these tax breaks and benefits for the wealthy and the corporations and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that that was a very interesting point. Also, another point that came out during this debate was, this whole issue of military. Like, one of the points that Pence kept making was how Donald Trump was strong and decisive when it came to military matters, like when it came to attacking those terrorists in Syria, the ISIS and, the leader of ISIS, killing the leader of ISIS, and also taking action against an Iranian general and stuff like that. So he was projecting this message that Donald Trump was strong and decisive when it came to military matters and all that kind of stuff. And Kamala Harris brought up a key point, and that's these reports of Donald Trump calling military people losers and suckers, calling soldiers who are on the front lines fighting for this nation, calling them losers and suckers, calling people losers and suckers who risk their life, and for those who have died, those who have been injured, calling them losers and suckers. So she highlighted that point. Like, on one hand, you got Donald Trump trying to drape himself in all this patriotism and militarism and stuff like that, when at the same time, behind closed doors, he doesn't have any respect for these military people, calling them suckers and losers, and actually asking, like they said that he was walking in Arlington Cemetery. That's where a lot of veterans are buried, people who died fighting for this country, or people who have, have died after serving in the military. He was walking around in Arlington Cemetery, from what she was saying and from these reports. And he was saying, like, what was in it for them? Like, why did they become soldiers? What was in it for them and stuff like that? This man doesn't understand anything about what it means to sacrifice, what it means to die for a cause that's bigger than your own self-interest. So I thought that that was a great point that she brought out. She also brought out the point about John McCain and like how Donald Trump had disrespected John McCain. Now, Donald Trump basically talked about how John McCain is not a hero. And, and the reason why he said that is because he said basically he doesn't like people that are captured. You're not a hero for being captured in war and stuff like that. This is a man who was tortured, who was a political prisoner in Vietnam, went through all that suffering. And you had this guy, Donald Trump, a draft dodging coward, having the nerve to criticize this man. So that was something she highlighted. And I like the fact that she brought out these points. She also brought up the point about the Russians and how they had a bounty on U.S. soldiers' heads and stuff like that. But yet Donald Trump doesn't raise that with Putin and all that kind of stuff, despite all these private conversations that he had with them. one of the things that I really liked that they talked about, they talked about this issue of race, and they had, before I get to that, they had this long back and forth about the environment and all that kind of stuff. And basically you had Pence saying that the ideas proposed by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would hurt the economy and hurt jobs and all that kind of stuff. And, you basically had Kamala Harris and Joe Biden trying to back away from the fact that they supported the Green Deal and all that kind of stuff. And there's basically a new type of Green Deal that's very similar to a prior Green Deal and stuff. So I thought that that was an interesting segment of the discussion. Let's see. Oh, yeah, there's some other points I want to make before I get to that Breonna Taylor. That's going to be like the focus of this whole thing. I'm going to really focus in on that. But another thing that I have in my notes is just Kamala Harris's expressions on her face while this guy Mike Pence was talking. Like, she had the expression, it was like, the first thing I thought when I saw some of her expressions was like her expression on her face basically was like, nigga, please. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't be for real type of expression on her face. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous and stuff. And then, they really had a deep discussion about, about COVID-19 and stuff. And, you had Kamala Harris emphasizing the fact that the Trump administration failed to take decisive action around COVID, failed to take effective action around that, failed to even follow their own guidance at their own events and stuff like that. And she highlighted the fact that here we have over 210,000 people who have died from that virus in the United States. And then in response, you had Pence basically say far more people would have died if they didn't take the action that they took. And then they also said that basically Joe Biden's plan for addressing COVID-19 is just a duplicate of what Donald Trump and them are already doing. Yeah, so so they went into, the virus issue a little bit more. The moderator asked a question. She asked about the Trump administration not following its own guidance. Like, they had some meetings at the White House and stuff like that, where they weren't practicing all this social distancing. You didn't have people wearing masks. And we see what has happened in the White House. The White House has literally become a cesspool of COVID-19. All these people are coming down positive with this virus. Like, they said, like 13 people had this virus in the White House, or tested positive for this virus and stuff like that. And that points to a lack of leadership. And then you had Pence basically trying to shift things by saying, stop playing politics with people's lives, and all that kind of stuff, basically saying, well, she's manipulating this issue of COVID-19 for politics. So next, I want to finally get to this Breonna Taylor question that was raised. They asked, the panelists were asked about the Breonna Taylor case. They were asked if justice was done in that case. And Kamala Harris said that she doesn't believe that justice was done in that case. And she talked about how the killing of Breonna Taylor was unjustified. And she also pointed out the example of George Floyd, what happened to him. And she highlighted the fact that there were many marches and protests and stuff like that. And people of all different ages and races actually participated in those protests. So that was something that she talked about. And she talked about some of the measures that the Biden administration wants to, the Biden campaign wants to implement if they're elected, like ban on chokeholds, a national registry for law enforcement, for police officers. So that way officers with, a history of complaints against them can't just hop from one police department to another. She also talked about eliminating, she talked about other criminal justice reforms, such as eliminating private prisons, getting rid of cash bail, and she also talked about legalizing marijuana. So that was what she had to say in response to that particular question. But when it came to that question, Mike Pence said that he trusts the justice system. That's what he had to say. And he went on to talk about how he, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. But the fact that this man would say he trusts the justice system, I mean, that should tell you everything you need to know about this Trump administration. It should make it clear to you that they don't really understand the plight of African Americans in this country. They don't really understand, or they accept, or they're fine with the system as it is. A system that regularly denies Black people justice. A system that has repeatedly let these police get away with murdering our people. So in his mind, the justice system is acceptable. He believes in a justice system that allowed Trayvon Martin's killer to walk, a justice system that allowed so many of these pig police to kill our people to walk after committing crimes against our people. He also complained about Joe Biden and them believing in the notion that America is implicitly racist or in institutionalized racism and stuff like that. The fact that you had this Trump administration denying the existence of institutionalized racism in this country, again, that should tell you everything you need to know as a Black voter about the priorities of the Trump administration. You are not a priority in their minds. Black people are not a priority in their minds. So yeah, that was one thing that, that stood out to me. And then he also complained, Mike Pence also complained about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris basically insulting law enforcement. And he complained about Kamala Harris filibustering Tim Scott's bill to deal with some of these issues and stuff like that. So, you had these people complaining about law enforcement, what's happening to law enforcement, or insults to law enforcement, but they're not complaining about these Black lives that are being lost at the hands of law enforcement. They're not complaining about Breonna Taylor getting shot and killed. They're not complaining about, all these incidents of police brutality that have happened. Instead, they're more concerned with so-called insults against the police. And to shift the conversation, Mike Pence wanted to focus on record unemployment, record low unemployment in the Black community. He wanted to take credit for that, as if Donald Trump had something to do with that, as if that's a result of Donald Trump's work, when we know for a fact that the low unemployment rate is a result of what Obama did during his term in office. During Obama's reign in the White House, the unemployment rate in the Black community was on a steady decline, and it continued to decline after he left. So you had that. So you got this Trump administration trying to deflect, denying the existence of institutionalized racism, defending these pig police, and talking about they believe in a justice system. So you got two choices here. You have one choice is about some kind of reform when it comes to these police issues, and you got another choice that doesn't even believe that it's an issue, doesn't even believe that there's any problem with the system as it's currently set up. And one thing that I like about Kamala Harris, she highlighted Donald Trump's racism and his pandering to these white supremacists. She talked about the statement that Donald Trump made during the debate, where he talked about how that racist group, Proud Boys, should stand back and stand by. basically meaning you hold up for now and be ready when stuff pops off. You be on a reserve, just like you have reserve troops or, you know, reserve football players or something like that. You're on the reserves. When we need you, we'll call you. That's basically what he was saying. And she cited the example of Charlottesville, where you had those racist white supremacists walking around with torches, using racial slurs, you know, and anti-Semitic language and all that kind of stuff, spewing hateful rhetoric and racism. But in Donald Trump's mind, as she pointed out, those were some very fine people. She also talked about how Donald Trump implemented the Muslim ban, you know, how he started his campaign with, you know, anti-Mexican rhetoric, talking about Mexicans are criminals and rapists and drug dealers and all that kind of stuff. And she pointed out how America deserves better. And I thought that that was a powerful point. And, you know, I'm glad that she raised that point. You know, Mike Pence brought up some interesting points as well about Kamala Harris in response to that. He talked about how when she was DA, there were more Black people incarcerated as a result of her decisions and all that kind of stuff. And then in response, she talked about different reforms that she helped to implement when she was a DA. She talked about how, you know, she required training on implicit bias and reentry programs, and also body cameras for police officers. You know, and we know that that's crucial, even with the video footage of these atrocities that occur, they allow these police to walk. And, you know, the last thing I'll say is this, like, when they were talking about the issue of health and all that kind of stuff, the health of these candidates, you know, of the presidential candidates and all that kind of stuff, and if they have some kind of plan in place just in case, you know, they're not able to carry out their duties, if they've had discussion with their vice presidential candidates, as they were raising that point, it highlighted the point that these people that were debating could possibly become president if something happens to the president. You know, for instance, you know, I think that Donald Trump is 74, if I'm not, yeah, he's 74. And Joe Biden is like 78. That is very old. That's very old. Like in 4 years, he'll be like 82 years old. So anything can happen when you're that old, especially with this virus going on. And then Donald Trump is already sick from the virus. He could, you know, anything. I mean, he claims he's cured and stuff like that, but he already has this deadly virus and stuff. So anything is possible. And that makes you think about whether or not these people should be president, because if they become vice president, anything could happen. They could end up being president. And when I thought about that, you know, I just thought about like who looked more presidential, who came across more presidential during that debate. And even though I'm voting for, you know, Biden and Kamala Harris, you know, I think that many people would look at that debate and think that Pence came across more presidential. And it may be his tone, and it may be sexism, frankly, like sexism may be a part of it. Maybe it's because we've been trained to think of the president as just a man, on, you know, as that's a position for a man or whatever. So those are my quick little thoughts about this. Oh, I see that Dave Bowman said he'll be 78 next month. So let me look up his age, because somebody was giving me an age for one of these candidates for Donald Trump, and it was wrong. So let me check Wikipedia real quick to see exactly how it goes. During the debates, they said 78. Let's see. Hold on one second, everybody. Oh yeah, so he is 77 years old, and his birthday is November 20th. So yes, you're correct. So he'll be But anyway, like that's still up there. He'll be 80 something by the time his term is up. That is very old. All right, so let's see what folks are saying before I close out. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Dave Bowman said that Mike Pence won the debate. Yeah, I could see how somebody can make that point. Like Mike Pence was good, as I said before, at explaining his position, and he had a response for everything that Kamala Harris threw at him. Like everything that she threw at him, like whether it was the virus. And I can't wait, as I was telling my friends on Facebook, I can't wait till they do the fact check. I'm sure they're gonna say, "Oh, Mike Pence was wrong about this. He was lying about that." So I can't wait to see that. But the way he came across, he projected like confidence, like he knew what he was talking about, and he was certain. He didn't seem like he had any doubts in his mind, and he had quick answers to a lot of the questions that were answered that were asked. Even like a question dealing with the pandemic, like you would think that that would destroy his chances of winning any kind of debate or having a debate with her, like just on their track record dealing with that virus. You would think that that would have been a devastating point for him during this debate, and he wouldn't be able to recover from it. But he managed to pivot and to dodge some of those hard blows and stuff like that. But I think that Kamala Harris was coming at him hard, though. Cohen said that both candidates were actually good. Pence is sharp, unlike his boss. Yeah, I mean, it was a great debate because they both were good. They both were good. Like, I'm not going to say like Kamala Harris did a bad job or anything like that, because she definitely didn't. She held her own during this debate. And I like how she, stood up for herself, and she asked for more time and all that kind of stuff. Because that guy was just going on and on, even after the moderator was like, thank you, Pence, thank you, Mr. Vice President. He just kept talking over the moderator. So Rob M.M. said Pence is a career politician. Of course, Pence will not mess up. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Like, I mean, he's been in office for a long time, has held one position or another for a while. So he's used to all of these debates. And I think it showed throughout that debate. Like, even though a lot of people are biased and they're going to say, oh, man, how are you going to say he did a good job? You don't have to agree with somebody or what they're saying or even their position, or you can still oppose somebody, but still recognize game, still recognize that they did a decent job. Yeah, that moderator kept interrupting Pence because he kept going overtime. So Cohen said it's not about the questions, it's all about selling the audience a perception. And that's actually true. Like, I agree with that. Like, damn what the moderator's talking about. And the same is true when people just appear on news programs. Like, they come there with an agenda. They come there with a message that they want to convey. Damn what the interviewer is talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to be evasive to the questions that the interviewer is talking to you about, but you come there on a mission. You don't let these moderators or news programs dictate what your message will be. So I think that that's a good point. Like, they are there with a message that they're trying to convey, and they're trying to make a certain impression. That's what they're trying to do. So it's not even really about the questions. Like, sometimes when they would have a question, for instance, and they didn't have enough time to answer it, on the next question, they would follow up with the answer to the previous question. They would say, oh, well, I'll get to your actual question in a minute, but let me go back to this prior question that you raised. And I think that that's a good strategy. Like, I mean, I think that it makes sense for somebody to do that. Oh, I didn't hear about the raccoons, BB. But that fly, I was like, is that on my TV? Like, is something wrong with my TV or is that you know, a dark spot in his hair or whatever? Then I was like, no, that is actually a fly on his head, man. It was like staying in place no matter how he was moving his head. And it was on there for a good while. And my sister was talking about it on Facebook. What's that movie? I think it's Poltergeist, or no, it's Amityville Horror, where they had a scene with the flies in the bathroom and the person and stuff like that. And she was talking about how that reminded her of that. And, you know, like he's some kind of, it's just crazy, man. But I wonder if that's some kind of sign, man. But he literally had a fly on his head. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be talking about that, man. That was crazy. Yeah, so PSA 2 said Pence directed the conversation. Yeah, so those are my thoughts about this, man. Tell me what y'all think. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. Peace and blessings. Have a good evening.